Hey there, algebra friends. This is Miss Shinners here, ready to guide you through your very first algebra online lesson. Before we get started here, a few reminders. The first is just a giant high five for finding this video on day one. Awesome job. You're off to a great start. The other things I want to remind you of is make sure you are set up and ready to do some math. I would have either a graphing calculator ready or Desmos open as one of your tabs on your Chromebook. Also, make sure you have the 824 opened with Kami. This is what you're going to have to fill in and turn into your algebra teachers in order to be marked present for each day. So very important that you're following along and have that tab open while you watch the video. Lastly, I would have a tab that is your email open. If at any time during the video you have a question or clarification, send your algebra teacher or anyone you work with on algebra an email. We are all still here to support you. And don't forget about maybe people in the library, Mr. Johnston, Mrs. Susidik. We are all still here to support you. So shoot us an email if you have any questions. The other thing I would recommend before we jump into some math is get cozy, maybe get yourself a snack or a beverage. I've got my iced coffee. My morning algebra classes know I always have to have my iced coffee in the morning. So let me know what your snack or beverage of choice while you're working on your math is, and just let me know at the top of the page, just for fun. With that, let's get started here, guys. 824, we're asking ourselves, what is the connection? Completing the quadratic web. So we are going to be thinking about today going from a table to an equation. Before we do that, let's look at a quadratic equation and remind ourselves some of the patterns and connections we've already made. So we are being asked to find the x-intercepts. The x-intercepts, reminder, occur along the x-axis when your graph intercepts that x-axis, which is when y equals 0, when there's no y value. Well, when y equals 0, that is a value. So to find the x-intercepts, I am going to set y equal to 0 because that's the y value that gives me an x-intercept. In order to figure out when this quadratic will equal 0, the process we've been taking in class is to factor it and use the zero product property to figure out what x values will make my factors 0. So let's do that. It looks like my A is 1, my B is 12, and my C is 11. 1 times 11 goes up top, 12 goes on the bottom, and 1 goes underneath my dashed line. What multiplies to 11? 11 is prime, so the only way to multiply to 11 is 1 times 11. Does that add to 12? 1 plus 11 does give me 12, so I know that those are the values for P and Q. Next, I want to divide and slide. 1 divided by 1 is just 1, so I get a factor of x plus 1. 11 divided by 1 is 11, so I get a factor of x plus 11. So let's rewrite our quadratic in factored form. And now I'm going to use the zero product property. What x value will make this first factor equal to 0? Some of you might be able to jump right away and say, it's -1, Miss Shinners. But if you don't see that right away, that's okay. You just need to set that little factor equal to 0. And I get x equals -1. So -1 comma 0 is my first x-intercept for this quadratic. Let's do the same thing over here. Set x plus 11 equal to 0, and I get x equals -11. -11 is my second x-intercept. So let's ask ourselves, what is the connection? What is the pattern that I'm seeing among my intercept and my factor? My factor and my intercept. Who sees it? Shout it out in your home. They're opposites. And we're going to use this idea today to build our equations. I'm going to be giving you a table in 889, and we have to build the equation from that table. So let's first look through this table and figure out what are my x-intercepts. When does y equal 0? Y equals 0 when x is -3 and when x is 2. So those are my x-intercepts. X-intercepts are -3 and 2. So now let's build my equation. Remember, the relationship is opposites. What's the opposite of -3? X plus 3. What's the opposite of a +2? A -2. When I plug in -3, I will get 0. When I plug in 2, I will get 0. And when I get 0, that's an x-intercept. So it's all connected. Now, we should check our answer, check our work here. And the reason for that is I could have maybe a greatest common factor, or perhaps we made a mistake along the way. So in order to check my equation here, I'm going to write it down here. I'm going to plug in or substitute in a point and make sure that the point makes something that's true. All right. And if we get something that's not true, that tells us that we might have a greatest common factor or a mistake along the way. So what would be the easiest point to plug in? I think this guy right here. And the reason is when x equals 0, my math becomes just a little bit easier. So I'm going to plug in x equals 0 and y equals -6. And let's see what happens here, folks. 0 plus 3 is 3. 0 minus 2 is -2. 3 times -2 is -6. So I end up getting -6 equal to -6, which tells me I am doing great. I got the right equation. Let's move on to the next one. That one worked out great. Our first step is to look for the x-intercepts. Look for when y equals 0. When y equals 0, my x-intercepts are -5 and 1. And now I'm going to build my equation. The opposite of -5 is +5. The opposite of a +1 would be a -1. For this one, I'm going to show you another way you can check your work, and that's by using either Desmos or a graphing calculator. I'm going to just plug in the equation that I just found, and I'm going to make sure it gives me a table and graph that matches the table that was given in the problem. Uh-oh, I already forgot it. X plus 5, x plus 5, x minus 1, x minus 1, right? I don't know why I'm so forgetful right now. That's it. All right. So let's take a look here. The parabola gives me x-intercepts of 1 and -5. And let's pull up the table and make sure that the table matches the table that was given in the problem here. So I see -2, -9, -1, -8. Let's see if those values are in this table. They sure are, guys. So we can say that this is also a correct equation. So either method works to check your answer, but you should check your answer using one of those methods, okay? So we checked by graphing. By graphing, we checked. Okay. Ooh, that's bad handwriting. I'm still working on my Cami handwriting. I have more empathy for you guys. It's a little bit challenging. It's a work in progress. All right. So let's take a look at this last table here, guys. Let's pick out my x-intercepts. This table looks a little different. It's vertical instead of horizontal. Horizontal, but same process here. My x-intercepts are when y equals 0, so it looks like there and there. And so my x-intercepts are -1 and 1. And now let's build my equation from that. Opposite of a -1 would be a +1. Opposite of a +1 would be a -1 there. So just using that idea of opposites. And now pick whichever method you'd like to check your work, and make sure you check it. Since I've got Desmos open here, and I can probably pretty quickly go x plus 1, and then that's already x minus 1. So that was kind of easy. And let's take a look at this table and make sure it matches the table that was given in the problem. So I see -2, 3, and 2, 3. I'm going to check for those points, and I see them. So check mark, and I checked by graphing. Alrighty, folks, that's the new information from today. If you have any questions on that, please send an email to your algebra teacher. What you need to get finished next is the review and the preview. We've put it all in one document for you to make your life a little easier. I'm going to get you started on the review and preview here today, guys. So let's just take a look at the first one. Sorry, I dropped my pen. 893 wants us to find the slope and the y-intercept of the line. Alrighty. Well, what's our usual equation for a line? Y equals mx plus b. So I need to first solve for y in order to figure out what is my slope and what is my y-intercept. So solving for y means I get y by itself. So let's kick off this -3x. What's the opposite of a -3x? It's a plus 3x. So that goes away. So I get 6y equals, now not a huge deal, but notice I'm going to write the 3x first. Why am I going to do that? Because typically we say mx plus b, but it really doesn't matter as long as you remember the slope is always what's multiplied by x, and your y-intercept is your constant term. So let's divide everything by 6, and I get y equals 3 divided by 6. I could either reduce that fraction by dividing top and bottom by 3, and I would get 1/2. I also could put that into my calculator, Desmos, or my brain and think 1/2 is 0.5, and that's an acceptable answer as well. 24 divided by 6, I believe that should give me 4. And so that's my equation in y equals mx plus b form. This is my slope, and this is my y-intercept. The y-intercept is when x equals 0. So let's write it as an ordered pair, 0, 4. This is a great review problem. You might want to take a look at that one closer. Alrighty, guys. Now, before you turn in your homework, make sure you finish 894 and 895. So these are two problems I'm going to ask that you try on your own. Work as hard as you can. Use the homework help link for little nudges. And please reach out if you have any questions. Make sure you finish up these two problems and then submit to your algebra teacher. Best of luck. We will miss you guys, but do your best. And again, let me know if you have any questions. All right. Awesome job. Day 1.